In just 10 minutes, uncover 10 powerful takeaways from Tucker Carlson's shocking interview with Bishop Robert Barron. From why young men are turning to Christ, to how atheism fails, why autonomy is dangerous, and the hidden spiritual crisis destroying the West. Takeaway 1. Why more young men turn to Christ. Bishop Robert Barron highlights that many young men are coming back to Christianity because they are desperate for purpose in a culture that has robbed them of deeper meaning. They are tired of empty promises from modern ideologies, materialism, and moral relativism. Instead, they are seeking a path that gives them a solid foundation, objective values, and a reason to live beyond self-indulgence. Young men feel lost in a world that praises freedom but gives no direction. Bishop Barron says, freedom without order collapses in on itself, and he compares modern life to a river without banks that floods into a lazy lake, going nowhere. For example, a young man who spends his life on social media and video games might feel liberated, but eventually realizes he has nothing to live for. Religion gives him a higher cause, like aiming to serve God or raise a family with moral clarity, instead of chasing distractions. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2, the dangers of worshiping autonomy. Bishop Barron explains that the West has turned autonomy and personal choice into false gods. People now define themselves by how free they are, rather than by what they are free for. This leads to spiritual collapse, depression, and confusion. Autonomy without a higher purpose becomes toxic. Bishop Barron argues that real freedom is not doing whatever you want, but choosing what is truly good, even if it is hard. When people reject God's guidance, they get lost in their ego. He quotes Jesus saying, "The one who loses himself will find it," which shows that only by surrendering your personal control do you find lasting peace. For example, a man who quits his high-paying job to become a teacher might feel more fulfilled than when he was chasing money, because he is now serving others and pursuing a real good rather than his ego. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3. Why modern people are spiritually miserable. Tucker Carlson and Bishop Barron talk about the rise in depression, suicide, and loneliness, especially in the West. The bishop connects this spiritual crisis to the loss of belief in God and objective moral values. When society tells people to look only within for meaning, they end up caving in on themselves. This leads to anxiety, addiction, and despair. Bishop Barron uses the phrase curvatus in si, which means being curved in on yourself, like a black hole. For example, someone might have everything they thought they wanted, like a good job and independence, but still feel empty because they have no transcendent purpose. Without God or something higher to guide them, even their achievements feel pointless. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4, why atheism fails on a deeper level. Bishop Barron is blunt in his critique of the so-called new atheists. He says their arguments are recycled from old thinkers like Freud and Marx, and they totally misunderstand what God is. According to him, they treat God like Bigfoot, as if he were just another being in the universe you can prove or disprove. But God, as Christianity defines him, is not just a being. God is being itself, the one who makes everything else possible. You don't find God by looking for fingerprints in the sky. You find God by asking why anything exists at all. For example, Bishop Barron says that if you ask who created the Creator, you haven't understood the point. The real question is, why is there something rather than nothing? God is not a creature. He is the answer to that question. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5, secularism is just hiding from God. Secular people often claim they don't believe in God, but Bishop Barron argues that secularism is not about disbelief, it's about avoidance. He calls it the buffered self, where people surround themselves with noise and distractions so they never have to face the truth about God or the deeper meaning of life. According to Bishop Barron, the modern obsession with autonomy, screens, and productivity keeps people from hearing the still, small voice of God. For example, during a retreat for young men becoming priests, they had their phones taken away for a full year. Almost all of them said it was the best year of their lives. They read, they made friends, and they rediscovered what it means to live without constant distraction. We're halfway through the video. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're enjoying it, hit the thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. If you'd like to support us, please tap the thanks button below. It helps us keep making great content. Drop a comment and don't forget to hit subscribe for more. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6. Prayer is training for the soul. Bishop Barron shares his personal prayer routine and explains how prayer helps you overcome selfishness and develop a connection with God. He prays every morning for an hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament, reading scripture, praying the rosary, and practicing silence. He says prayer is not about asking for things, but about placing yourself in the presence of God and opening your heart. One of the most beautiful things he says is, prayer is finding the place in you where you are here and now being created by God. For example, many people think prayer is just repeating words, but Bishop Barron compares it to calming the monkey mind, the restless part of your brain. Like the Irish priest he once visited, who prayed the rosary quickly and softly, it becomes like a mantra that pulls you out of your distractions and into the presence of something holy. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7. Why people reject Christianity so violently. Bishop Barron says the real reason people hate Christianity is not because of logical reasons, but because of moral resistance. Christianity demands personal transformation. It tells you that your desires might be wrong, that your ego is not your God, and that you are accountable to something higher. Jesus is a dividing line, not just a wise teacher. He claims to be God. That forces a choice, either submit to him or reject him. There's no middle ground. For example, many revolutions in modern history, like the French and the Bolshevik, weren't just about economics or politics. They had an underlying hatred for Christianity. That's why churches were burned and priests were murdered. Christianity was in the way. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8. How the church lost its supernatural focus. Bishop Barron admits that in recent decades, especially after the Second Vatican Council, many Catholic leaders became too focused on being modern and relevant. They downplayed supernatural beliefs like salvation, grace, and miracles, and instead emphasized social justice and activism. While those are good things, he says they are only side effects of faith, not the core. When the church becomes just another charity or political movement, people leave. What draws people is mystery, transcendence, and truth that challenges them. For example, a church that only preaches about climate change or racism without any talk of heaven or hell will eventually feel like a TED Talk. People can get the same message from secular sources, so they stop going. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9. The sex abuse scandal points to evil. When Tucker asks about the reality of evil, Bishop Barron points to the clergy's sex abuse scandal as clear evidence. He says it was not just a human failure, but something that feels almost designed by a dark intelligence to destroy the church. For decades, bishops downplayed the issue or tried to handle it quietly, which only made things worse. He sees this as a demonic attack, especially since it happened just as the church was losing its sense of spiritual warfare. For example, Bishop Barron talks about Pope Leo XIII having a mystical experience in the early 1900s, warning that the 20th century would belong to the devil. Looking at the wars, genocides, and now the collapse of trust in the church, it's hard to deny that something dark was at work. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10. Christianity is on the offensive, not retreating. Contrary to what many believe, Bishop Barron says Christianity is not meant to hide from the world, but to engage and transform it. He explains that when Jesus said, "The gates of hell will not prevail against the church," he didn't mean the church is defending itself. He meant the church is attacking the gates. We are on the march, not on the run. This attitude was lost during the liberal years of the church, but it's coming back. Young believers today want a bold faith that fights lies, injustice, and evil without fear. For example, Bishop Barron points out that even as mainstream churches are shrinking, smaller communities that focus on tradition, beauty, and real truth are growing fast. These are people who don't want to be entertained. They want to be saved. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, hit the thanks button below. It really helps us keep going. If you enjoyed this summary, please leave a like and share it in your WhatsApp groups. To join discussion about this video, drop a comment below. And for more videos like this, hit the subscribe button below.